Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Security Squawk podcast. I am your co-host and cybersecurity expert, Brian, with Andre and Randy, who are also cybersecurity experts and co-hosts of the podcast. Welcome, guys. How are you?
Doing well over here at 75 degrees.
What the heck, man?
Nice and cool.
It's like 35 in Texas. It's freezing. We got snow in the ground, Brian. You'd be proud of us.
Yes, I would. We are frozen, so we are not as bad as some places in the country, but we are under 20 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's pretty cold. So
Fun times.
For the high. So, guys, we got a lot to talk about this week on the show. We are going to dive into a series of alarming breaches this week that hit organizations across various sectors. We're going to discuss the widespread impact of what happened to a bunch of Oregon school districts unrelated to the PowerSchool data breach. The University of Oklahoma's IT network issues have been made public, and we're going to talk about those. And even popular brands like Avery labels and folders and stuff that you buy in Staples. Familiar with Avery, they had to deal with a little bit of an IT issue in the last week, and a cycling company called Primal Wear. They've all fallen victims to cybercriminals in the last week. We're going to talk about those, and we're also going to talk about some ongoing threats that are either new or different that you're going to be want to be aware of, so you know how to handle them or you know how to recognize them when they come and reveal themselves to you, whether that be in your personal life or at work. We have a big mortgage group in Tennessee who's dealing with a data breach. And we're going to do a follow-up on a ransomware attack we talked about earlier, late in 2024, which is Wexford County. And they're still kind of limping along here, getting back from their cyber attack. And we're going to give you a new update on the Microsoft Teams exploitation that we talked about probably about 2 months ago. We're continuing to see Russian hackers use Microsoft Teams against companies. And it seems to be a trend that's growing. And we're going to revisit that and kind of give you an update on what's been going on since we covered it the first time. And we're going to touch on some updates on the PowerSchool breach. So we're going to get right into it. We got a lot to talk about and a little bit of time to do it, guys. And first one up on the docket is this: multiple Oregon school districts hit by a Caruth data breach. Caruth is a compliance consulting company. And I'm sure a lot of districts use compliance consulting companies. And I wouldn't really look at this as any different than, say, maybe an MSP or an IT or provider or anybody that you might outsource business type services to. This could happen to any of those companies. And in this case, it was a compliance consulting company who discovered suspicious activity on their computer network in December. And they're a third-party administrator that handles retirement savings plans for many Oregon school districts and some higher education institutions, including Chemeketa Community College. I don't even know if I said that right. But an investigation revealed that unauthorized access to this company's network occurred in December. And Beaverton School District officials shared, resulting in the compromise of sensitive employee data for Caruth clients. Caruth sent out a notice of the breach on January 13th. So essentially, all these teachers are, employees of the school districts. If they participate in a retirement savings plan through the district, this information is transferred over to this company, and this company had a data breach. We have a client that does a similar service to what this company, Accrued Compliance Consulting, does. So I'm very familiar with what's going on here. So it's very much like a third-party administrator for a 401k, but it's basically 403b, I believe, or something along those lines. So thoughts here, guys?
Yeah, there was a couple of things that kind of popped to my eye. The first thing is that, this is compromised over decades. They're talking about from 2000 to 2025 that there's data that's been breached there. And with that said, they're also saying that they're not going to they're not going to do like individual notifications. They're just basically saying, hey, if you happen to be reading this article or heard about it, go ahead and follow these steps. But they're not actually going to reach out to every single person, which for me, that's horrible, because these are most likely retired. They're not really talking to the school systems anymore. And, how are they going to know?
It's pretty crazy when you think about it, because I would think they were required by law. I can't speak for Oregon law, but I would think they'd be required by law to let the people know that there was some kind of a breach. They're offering the free credit monitoring, as usual. I would highly suggest that everybody, whether you've been involved in a breach or not, freeze your credit report. That way, that just stops them from being able to open up accounts in your name at the very minimum.
So you think this is just maybe them not wanting to spend the money to, send out 10,000 letters or?
Well, they didn't want to spend the money on doing cybersecurity, right?
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Touche.
So just to kind of touch on some of the details here, guys, Portland Public School officials said that the breach potentially impacts all employees who have been employed by the district for over a quarter century. It's believed that the data goes back all the way to November of 2000. And the Salem Kaiser Public Schools and Hillsborough School District said the breach impacts those employed between 2008 and present. More school districts and possibly other public agencies were also affected by the breach. We have yet to learn if there are more, but they are offering credit monitoring and identity restoration services. The company is, and they're advising you to monitor your accounts, review your retirement savings plans, bank accounts, credit card statements, and other financial accounts for suspicious activity. And if you see anything unusual, report it to your financial institution immediately. So it's just more evidence that when businesses don't protect your data, it's on you to deal with it.
Yeah. And how are you offering free credit monitoring if you're not telling the people?
And they also said, as we always recommend, consider placing fraud alerts or credit freezes on your credit report to help protect yourself from identity theft. Freezes. What's that?
Just do freezes, right?
100%. But yeah, I mean, they have a lot of information. I mean, about your finances, about you, because it's a retirement account, right? And they're required by law to collect certain information to verify your identity before you can even have the account. So all this information is stored and retained. So it's again, it's the jackpot of personal information when you hit companies like this. And companies like this need to do a better job of protecting your information that you so entrust them with. So any more thoughts on this, guys, before we move on? Here we go. All right. Ransomware hitting one of the more popular brands that you see in stores like Staples. And, I think if I open up our filing cabinet here or our closet here in work at the office, I'm sure I'd find Avery file folders, labels, envelopes, paper. But Avery, a multinational labeling and packaging solutions manufacturer, informed 61,193 customers that they had their information stolen in a ransomware attack against some of its IT systems in early December of 2024. So let's hear, guys, what's going on over at Avery.
Well, this is, go ahead, Randy.
No. I was laughing at something you said earlier, so go ahead.
Okay. I said this one is going to be interesting because they use the word credit card skimmer. And usually for me at least, when I think of credit card skimmer, I'm thinking you go to the gas station, you put in your credit card number, but behind that machine is the real machine. And that device is basically taking all your your information. So this is in the sense a virtual credit card skimmer where you're typing in your information and everything that Avery is getting is basically now being sent to the bad guys. So we've talked about this a few times where now remember with the chip and how people are using more of the chip. And now we're just seeing, okay, well, if they can't do it on the physical side, then how do we do it on the digital side where maybe these companies haven't really caught up or the technology is not allowing it to catch up because you're still having to manually input credit card numbers when you're doing a transaction.
And also, I call bull crap.
Whoa.
Not on what Andre's saying, but like a digital credit card skimmer. Like, oh, my computer didn't get ransomware. It was a digital. That is a huge water bottle. My computer didn't get breached or ransomed. It was a digital credit card scammer. Like the reality is their website, it looks like their website or sounds like their website got hacked and they just don't want to use those words. I mean, I could be wrong here, but doesn't it seem like that to y'all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. July to December. That's a long time to not notice anything.
Yeah. Something is going on. What it is, I have no idea.
Our website was hacked and we didn't know about it, and it acted like a digital credit card skimmer. I mean, it probably took all the information that was coming into the website. I don't think it was just skimming anything.
Well, this happened to me a couple of years ago with, I think I told you guys, with a local sandwich shop, but it's a regional chain at a minimum, I think. I mean, they're all up and down the East Coast anyway. I don't know if they've go out west too far, but we would order the office lunch, and every month for like 4 months I was changing my credit card number, and then we finally figured out that it was this place we were ordering sandwiches from, that was our credit card number was being stolen every time we did a transaction with them. So yeah, these things happen. People's websites get hacked, and then they put something in the middle that steals all this information and sends it back to a hacker, and the transaction still goes through. So yeah, it's like a virtual skimmer, as Randy said.
I mean,
what?
So the other thing that's a little disturbing here, that we probably don't think about, the article didn't mention, but over the years, so I don't really do, like, our company will still do, obviously IT for people. I'm not on that many people's computers, but I will say back when I was, and over the years, there were a ton of little old ladies and such that had the Avery software on their computer,
right?
Even in the
You're not wrong.
And all that, and that's always a little more disturbing because I think the older you get, the more susceptible you are to scams, and you don't want to upset your children, and you don't want to involve other people. You don't want to be a bother or whatever. And, next thing you know, you're getting scammed and you're on the way to the bank to get gift cards for somebody, so you can fix something. So that's a little part that's disturbing to me.
Yeah. I don't know if you're necessarily with that software, you were more or less integrating the labels and stuff with your word processing program. I don't think you were necessarily buying, and I don't know when Avery actually started selling direct, because to me, I thought you could only buy that stuff at like a office supply store or something like that. But apparently they're clearly selling direct, and tried to take e-commerce into their own hands, and it seemed to have maybe backfired a little bit. So, all right, guys, moving right along.
Oh, one last thing I would say, Brian, is companies need to treat their website like another computer. It needs to be monitored. You need to be watching traffic. You need to be watching for anomalies. And if you see something weird, you need to get in there and fix it ASAP before it turns into something like this.
We also need to make sure that somebody's managing your website. And I could go into a deep dive about what that means, but there's basically two components to your website, right? You have the server, which is the hardware it runs on, and then you have whatever platform you're running, like WordPress or whatever you use, right? And unless you have a service that's updating that for you, you need to make sure somebody's updating those two components of your website at all times, or a hacker will come along and find a vulnerability they can exploit, and that's how they get these virtual like credit card skimmers or any kind of info stealer on your website. Low-level cyber criminals can just, like, if you just have a regular website that just has like a contact us form, they can put something in that just siphons off that information. And what they do with that, it could be as easy as like they just send that person phishing emails, or they could, be stealing that information for other purposes. So you got to keep this stuff up to date and pay attention to it. And we see this a lot, right, Randy? People just get websites and they just leave them. And then next thing you know, they have a problem.
Yep.
All right. So moving right along, did I switch screens here? Yep. University of Oklahoma isolates its system after unusual activity on its IT network. And here we go again with more K through 12 and universities dealing with cyber attacks. These organizations are favorites for cyber criminals here and have been for several years. And here are the details that I have, guys. The attack occurred just as the new semester began, affecting large institutions with over 34,000 students. Ransomware gang claimed to have stolen 91 gigabytes of data, including sensitive employee and financial information. And the attack is attributed to the ransomware group known as FOG, which emerged in May 2024. But if you guys remember, I talked about them at the end of 2024, saying that, hey, these guys are starting to appear a lot more recently at the end of 2024. So they must have figured out something throughout the year, because they are one of the top ransomware groups that are hitting organizations right now. Experts believe the attackers exploited compromised VPN credentials. Oh my God, we're still there. To gain access to the university's network. The attack highlights how large universities are often targeted during or after holiday seasons, when IT teams are typically understaffed. But it also, as Andres always likes to point out, they know when to hit you, because they know when you need to do things and use your computers. And when people are coming back for the semester, usually they're processing a lot of financial aid. And when you can't process financial aid, guess who doesn't get paid? Other institutions like Stanford University and the University of Michigan have faced similar ransomware attacks recently. And East Central University suffered, they are also in Oklahoma. They also suffered a ransomware attack last year that led to a data breach involving student information and social security numbers. And the attack came shortly after the university had to close its campus and switch to remote work due to a snowstorm, potentially creating additional vulnerabilities. There we go, guys. Thoughts?
I got a couple. So the first one is 91 megabytes. Like, what happened there? Hard drive got
giga.
No,
it says megabytes.
Yeah.
It says megabytes?
Yeah, it's like the bad guys
They stole 9 pictures of a frat party. Okay.
I'm gonna say it's gigabytes, and they just
and hopefully not terabytes.
Yeah. But another thing too, though, is we always talk about universities and hospitals, but one thing we never talk about is how complex that the network is. Just imagine you do have, they say 34,000 students. Let's just say it's 30,000 students that come into that building every day. They have their phones that's connected to the Wi-Fi. They have their personal devices that's connected to the Wi-Fi, plus maybe another 4,000 employees. So you're managing about 40,000 devices on the network. It's a lot. And of course, this is happening. My point that I'm trying to say is like just for the IT director and IT staff, just to manage that internal network, and then now also have to deal with the outside and people banging in from the external. I mean, we manage a hotel, and they probably have 150, guests a day, and even that we're getting calls once a week. So just imagine you got 34,000 people on your network, and how you're having to deal with those people because they can grab you by their ear when something isn't working, a projector isn't working, or whatever the case is. So just wanted to point that out. It is a complex thing. That doesn't excuse anything, but they are dealing with a lot.
I mean, it is a very complex thing. Brian, how we always talk about when one of the times when businesses are very vulnerable is when they're merging or when they get acquired, because there's a lot of change. And so just to add on to what Andre's saying, in a university system, there's a ton of change going on all the time in their network, as far as new students coming, old students going. And this is not the first time that we've seen where there were vulnerabilities in universities and in their systems. So anyway, I just want to agree with what you're saying, Andre. You're totally right there.
Yep. So we'll keep you updated as we learn more as to what happens to Oklahoma University, but it is a large university dealing with a ransomware attack here this week of January 20th, 2025. Another company dealing with a ransomware attack, guys, is Primal Wear Cycling. I think they have a couple different brands that they kind of run under because I found this under a different brand, but Ransom Hub has them, and they're releasing files on their dark web leak site. The attack supposedly occurred about 11 days ago on the 10th of January. They say they have over 10,000 files and 17 gigabytes of data. Primal Wear is a Denver-based cycling and apparel manufacturing supplier, and the company has been in business since 1992. It says no customer data appears to have been breached in the attack, but who knows? Ransom Hub is the group responsible for the attack, and like I said, they are publishing lots of information on their dark web leak site to prove that they have stolen data from this organization, which, guys, is typically an indication that this company is not negotiating with the group, which potentially could mean that they are not going to pay the ransom or what have you. So we don't have a lot of information on this attack, guys. I kind of gave you all of it, but what are your thoughts here with a retail/manufacturing organization dealing with a ransomware attack and not appears not to be entertaining paying the ransom?
This one brings up all kinds of red flags for me, because I believe they're a small to medium-sized business, which, if we're just talking statistics, they're usually barely making it from paycheck to paycheck. And I'm just talking statistically, not what I actually know about this company. So my big concern when I see this, even if they don't pay the ransom, are they going to be able to afford the downtime? Are they going to be able to afford the loss of company morale? Are they going to be able to afford, employees leaving? Are they going to be able to afford not being able to accept payments, not to pay their employees? The list goes on where, when we see sometimes these companies that have, $900 billion cap and they get a $50 million ransomware, it's like a tiny drop in the bucket. But for most small and medium businesses, just the disruptions alone, even if you don't include the ransomware, really puts them close to ending the business. So this is the part for me that's disconcerting.
And we always hear, right? Why would someone want to hack a bike? I mean, I make bicycles. Who cares about bicycles, right?
Right. Like, what do we have that somebody would want? Well, the idea here is the cyber criminals want to hurt them from being able to produce bicycles and sell bicycles. And maybe they failed here, or maybe they didn't. Because private companies is one thing Randy didn't point out, is they have the luxury of deciding when they want to release this and what they want to say was impacted, unlike SEC regulated public companies and other types of like FTC regulated companies, non-bank banking financial institutions and things like that, guys. They have to disclose this stuff. And this bike company really doesn't fall under any of those. So right now, under the laws of the land, they have the luxury of basically deciding what they want to tell regulators and customers, and whether they want to use cyber insurance if they have it and things like that. But what we do know is your leaked information doesn't appear on dark web leak sites unless you are deciding to not engage with these cyber criminals. And we'll keep you updated as we learn more. Go ahead, Randy.
Oh, just going to add. So a couple things that might be of interest. So according to Zoom Info, they had a revenue of 5.7 million last year. Mm-hmm. They had a PPP loan of 445,000, which resulted in the retention of 32 jobs. So we're probably talking, 30 to 50 people. And it does say in Zoom Info, they moved their offices in July of 2024. Once again, I mentioned earlier, transitional things like that have the tendency to put companies at risk of a cyber incident, just because there's change involved and things often get overlooked. So,
yep, 100%. Good work there on Zoom Info. Mortgage Investors Group, guys, big mortgage company out of Tennessee, confirms data loss after Black Basta claims. So our favorite ransomware group, Black Basta, or at least Andre's, claimed cyber attack on MIG was claimed by the Black Basta ransomware operation. And the attackers gained unauthorized access to MIG's computer environment, potentially compromising customers' full names and financial details. This incident is part of a series of ransomware attacks targeting lending and real estate companies, indicating a broader trend in the industry. And the other companies in this sector that recently faced similar attacks include National Direct Mortgage, Loan Depot, First American, Fidelity National Financial, and Mr. Cooper. According to the FBI, CISA, and HHS, the Black Basta ransomware group has breached more than 500 organizations worldwide between April of 2022 and May of 2024. Obviously, since May of 2024, that number has only gone up. It sounds like this group gets about a person or a company about every 2 to 3 days, guys. And MIG's breach notice did not specify the nature of the intrusion or the number of customers affected, leaving some serious questions unanswered. The cyber attack occurred last month relative to the article's publication, suggesting that it happened in late 2024. Article was published January 15th, 2025. Thoughts here, guys?
Yeah, Black Basta's been around since 2022-ish. And I remember when it just came out, we would make jokes. And if that name was on any article, we would want to talk about it. But it's also interesting to see that, if you guys remember with the old administration, housing was one of the critical, about 16 different industries that we were told, that the hackers were told not. So they're still going after those people. So hopefully something changes.
Yeah, and I would say just about everybody in this particular field involving mortgages, they're going to fall under either SEC compliance. Brian, you can probably speak to this, or the FTC safeguards rule, which is similar. So if you're out there and you're in a mortgage and investor group, you really need to make sure that you're compliant with these laws, because these things, like unlike the one we talked about in the last segment, This one could have teeth with it as far as the government's concerned. So
very, very interesting. We will keep you posted as we learn more as to what's happening with that attack and what information actually gets released. I know what kind of information you disclose when you go and apply for a mortgage, and I can only imagine what they actually have. So no answers yet, guys, to when Wexford County will return back to normal after November ransomware attack. And my goodness, if we haven't seen this one play out before, I think Suffolk County and Long Island comes to mind. But Wexford County's been dealing with the aftermath of the ransomware attack that happened on Election Day in November. More than 2 months later, Wexford County Administrator Joe Porterfield said most phone systems are back up with the exception of a few departments, like the main line to the sheriff's office and the register deeds. So the cyber attack is impacting their ability to put some servers back online safely, including the register of deeds, which means you can't buy or sell property in this county until this problem is resolved. And, yes, it impacts families, but, I think more importantly, and a perspective that I have now after I met a friend who's a real estate investor, you really impact these businesses and their ability to make money. And they rely on moving a lot of real estate. I mean, the guy I'm talking about probably moves at least 5 to a dozen houses a month. And if he can't do that for 2 or 3 months at an average of $300,000-$400,000 a house, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. And what's even worse is what it says here. It says records from 2016 to the present, they have no data on, but don't worry, they have images of those records saved on rolls of film. Like, how is that even like?
It's an archive.
Microfiche.
It's a microfiche archive.
Yeah, I know, but that's gonna take forever when you need something. Yeah. Where's the 2025 backup plan? We have it in rolls.
That was the backup plan.
Microfiche.
Microfiche.
At least they have one.
Yeah. Wow. Good point. And you're gonna good luck trying to find your old transaction from back then. Oh, I think it was around 2015. It's either going to be like, well, let us start looking, or it's going to be like, well, sir, we're going to need an exact date.
Could be.
What a pain.
But they're saying 2016 to now, basically what they said. Not even like 1982. We're talking 2016. That's crazy.
I think also I just wanted to throw out, like, when you first mentioned this in the green room, you know what I thought to myself, Brian? I think this a lot about these things. I thought, oh, the gift that keeps on giving. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that like, oh, happy joy, they're still hacked, but just these hacks that could have been most likely either A, preventable, or B, the blast radius could have been extremely limited and it could have been a blip. Like, there's probably a 99.5% chance, 95 at the minimum, that it either A, could have been prevented, or B, could have just been a blip and they could have been back in business. But because they didn't have things in place, now it's going on and on and on. And this kind of stuff happens to businesses as well. And it's really disturbing to watch.
Yes, it is. And we will keep you updated as we learn more on this one as well. And guys, moving right along, we got just a few more minutes here to kind of wrap up the show and get to 4 more articles. Can we do it? Blue Yonder. We talked about these guys earlier in the end of 2024, and they announced that they were hacked because you remember this, a lot of people were saying, oh, Starbucks got hacked, when it was actually Blue Yonder. And right around the same time, Clop Ransomware Group came out and said, we also hacked Blue Yonder with this Clio vulnerability. And then Blue Yonder kind of came out and said, no, they didn't. Well, here we are. I'm going to feel like it's like a month and a half, 2 months later. Blue Yonder is now investigating Clop ransomware threat linked to exploited Clio CVEs or vulnerabilities is basically what CVE means. The attacks were linked to exploited vulnerabilities in the Clio file transfer software, specifically Clio Harmony, VL Trader, and Lexicom. And 2 critical vulnerabilities were identified in 2024. And Clop is a financially motivated threat group. Previously, they exploited the MoveIt file transfer software in a massively successful campaign. And the group threatened to leak data from the affected companies if they failed to make contact by a specific weekend. Blue Yonder confirmed using Clio for certain file transfers and took immediate steps to mitigate the threat once the 0-day was confirmed. But security research criticized Clio for delays in releasing patches, with one vulnerability receiving a CVE just days after a patch was issued. So this seems to be a big mess on Clio's part, guys, that is affecting a lot of companies, including Blue Yonder and their customers. It's pretty crazy, the web that this has spun.
And that's why I think we have to have some type of oversight, because it's pretty impossible for us buying and using third-party software to be able to make sure that they're doing their job. And if they're holding our data, there needs to be some type of guideline for these type of supply chain companies that we all use.
Any thoughts on that, Randy?
No extra thoughts. No
additional thoughts. Yeah, I mean, there sounds like what you're suggesting there, Andre. The government's trying to head in that direction, but we're probably many, many, many years, if not decades, away from getting our heads around something like that, like a standardization around, these types of things. So, stuff is basically built more secure than it is today. So when you buy it, you don't have to worry about all these updates and everything that we have to worry about today. It's very it's very inefficient when companies start to wrap their head around what it costs to take care of these security gaps in software and hardware that they've already invested in. That's when things will start to change and the pressure will shift from the companies cleaning up vulnerabilities to, hey, don't even sell us or give us stuff that has these vulnerabilities in the first place. And if you do release software or hardware that has vulnerabilities, you should be the one that has to update it. Why should I have to spend more time and money? So it's like the double-edged sword with using technology. Like, you're going to have to invest in resources, whether that be humans or some kind of software, to help you manage and keep all of this stuff updated in the name of, technology, right? Mm-hmm. Is there any other way to say it? But that's the name of the game, and we'll see if that ever shifts. But I feel like, in 20 years, companies are going to look around in the next 20 years and go, why are we responsible for this? The problem is, guys, the reason it's not an issue right now is because most companies aren't doing this. Most companies aren't updating like they should be. And once they start updating and being required to address these vulnerabilities, meaning put a plan in place, dedicate resources to making sure that this stuff is up to date. Once they understand what that entails, that's when I believe the pushback will start happening.
I mean, very similar to like a car recall, right? They know the brake isn't working. They let everybody know, and they know that, if they try to ignore the situation, there's a big lawsuit and, possible lives lost. But in this case, businesses going out of business.
Yeah, and I look at it a little bit differently. I think businesses are just fat, dumb, and happy off technology, and they're living off the hog. And they don't understand that they have to invest in what I'm talking about. And one day they're going to learn that, they're about to die from a heart attack because they haven't been paying attention to this stuff.
So it's interesting, because that made me think of it in a different way. So when we do an evaluation on a company, we look at how old their hardware is, and we come up and give them a number like, here's your hardware debt. Like you've been borrowing off the future by not replacing these computers. And it's the same thing with cybersecurity. If you're not doing it, you're going into debt with it, and you're borrowing from your future, hoping you won't get a breach or an attack. Right. And if you do, you're going to have to pay that debt and a lot more.
Right. Or it could be a regulator comes in and says, you have to do this now. And you have to prove to us that you're doing it. And if you don't, and it's like, okay, we got to start doing it. Oh my God. Like, what do you mean it's going to take, that much effort to get us up to where we need to be? And they start to look at the price tag associated with that. Yes, it's cheaper than a cyber attack, but it's still something they never had to pay for before. And that's the problem, right? When they've never had to do it before, they've never had to put the expense out just because they're unaware. Some people do it out of gross negligence because they are aware and they just decide not to do it. But most people, I would say, are unaware that they need to be doing this stuff at the level that they need to be doing it. And that's where the problem starts to creep in for businesses. All right, guys. Randy, I'm going to toss this one to you because I don't know a whole heck of a lot about it, but it's this HPE and a hacker, a group called IntelliBroker, and they've claimed on stolen sensitive data from HP Enterprise, which is essentially who builds servers for HP branded servers. They allegedly had access to HPE system for at least 2 days, and the data reportedly stolen, and Randy's going to explain why this is a big deal here. Certificates, source code for Zerto and ILO products, Docker builds, and old user personal information used for deliveries.
It's this. Okay, so this one, first off, is hot off the presses. So this is like, developing breaking news, if you will. We don't have all the details, but what you just mentioned, Brian, like ILO, that's what HP uses to control servers, even when they're off.
Right.
And so if you're able to if the bad guys can look at that source code, let's just pick up that one product.
Yep.
If they can look at that source code for that, they can find vulnerabilities, and then they can basically give themselves permanent access into a tiny, it's not even they call the BIOS, like the brain of the computer. Well, the ILO is a totally separate little computer that runs off its own everything, basically, that you can use to boot up your server. You can shut it off. You can push things to it. So short story long, if this is real, like I said, this is off the presses. We don't have all the details yet, but if this is real, this is going to be one of those like Exchange server hacks from, they got source code for Exchange server and other like massive hacks that are going to have repercussions for years.
Yeah. I mean, this is the last thing you want. If there's any part on your server or quite frankly, in your network that you want to keep secure and you don't want to have vulnerable, it's your controller card for your servers if you have them. Because as Randy said, they can be controlled on or off. As long as it's got a little bit of power coming to it, you can pretty much do what you want with these things.
Yep.
You also have certificates, which is how these things authenticate you. You could basically pretend you're something you're not and get access to something, which is very, very concerning as well. The other interesting thing, and I don't know if you know anything about this, Randy, but they immediately activated cyber response protocols and disabled related credentials. That's a little bit scary as well, that little tidbit. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that there and how that can be used, but the fact that they immediately went and disabled related credentials, that like gives me it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up.
Tell us why it does.
Just because that kind of indicates that they have some kind of common credential built into the source code or somewhere that, if somebody knows it's there, then now we're in trouble.
Yeah, that's true. Like for years, Apple's password to its root system was Alpine. and Dell had the same thing into there. And I'm talking like iPhones, but like Dell on their server products also had like a default root password. Maybe it has something to do with that. I don't know.
Could be. We'll find out. But to kind of move right along here.
Got to keep
Andre,
our eye on
thoughts
this
here?
one for sure.
No thoughts, Andre, right?
I'm good. I'm good.
Moving right along, Russian ransomware hackers increasingly posing as tech support on Microsoft Teams. Now, if you remember, in the end of 2024, we covered this story on a podcast, and we're bringing it back up today because, as you can see in the headline, increasingly posing. The story we brought to you, I guess, back in November, I think it was, basically told us that this is happening, right? That Teams is being used increasingly, in addition to things like Outlook and email and phishing. Like, there are ways that cybercriminals are using social engineering and testing your employees and attacking your networks through your employees by getting access through Microsoft Teams. And that was a report from Microsoft, and this is now a report from a security company called Sophos, who's kind of backing up Microsoft, saying, like, we're aware of 15 companies who in the last 2 months who have been exploited this way. So we're going to kind of reiterate what's going on. And this is what cyber criminals do, guys. They pivot and they stay ahead of where companies are at with their security and awareness training. Because, like, look, everybody's looking for the Nigerian prince email at this point. Nobody's really thinking that some scam could happen to them originating from somewhere else and then moving over to Microsoft Teams. So, at the end of the day, some problem happens to your employees, whether that be email problems or something on the computer that these Russian hackers are able to figure out. And then they call your employees through Teams and try to say, hey, I'm from IT. I know you're having this problem. We can see it. We're here to help you. Right? Now you trust this person because it's like, how would they know I'm, in this case, getting thousands of emails every minute, right? And this guy's calling up saying, I'm calling to help you with that email problem you're having. Okay, great. And then, hey, click this link. I'll send it to you in the Teams chat. Boom, click it, and bang. Now they have access. That's how quick it goes, and that's how simple it is. Article goes in to say they pose as IT help desk managers or technicians, often contacting employees who are experiencing a flood of suspicious emails or some other IT issue. The attackers use voice and video calls on Teams to appear more legitimate. The FBI is very aware of this, identifying 2 groups that are actively exploiting this: Storm 1811 and Fin 7. And the attackers take advantage of employees' trust in outsourced IT support. They usually create a high-stress situation, such as when experiencing large volumes of suspicious emails, to get employees to let their guard down and allow them into your network. So what can companies do, or what should companies do, guys, to make sure that something like this doesn't happen to them? Or is there nothing they can do?
They can do something, and it's practically free. Train your employees. Tell your employees about this. Send out an email, do a video, 2-minute, you must watch this video, and just tell your employees what's happening.
Yeah, that's a great point, Andre, because one of the things in the training, I know because I take it myself with my company, is that when your emotions are heightened, be on extra alert, right? So if you get an email that ticks you off, be on extra alert. If you get 3,000 spam emails all at once, be on extra alert. But the other thing, though, Brian, I would say, it's super easy to go into the Teams admin portal under users, just change external access from allow all to allow basically zero trust. Allow just the ones that you've added. So like somebody will hit me up on Teams, like, man, I tried to hit you up on Teams. Why couldn't I? Well, you're not allow listed. Send me your email address. I'll allow list you by domain. Then you and I can talk on Teams. That's just a safe way to do it. Now, there's some organizations that's harder to do, like maybe like a chamber of commerce that deals with thousands of businesses, but it's still worth the effort, to go in and just have allow list only. If we're going to talk on Teams, make it be that we have to allow it first. So, but part of the article though, Brian, and I'll close on this, part of the article though said that they weren't paying attention. They weren't following it close enough. And the reality is most workers are just trying to get their dang work done. And they're focused on that. This is an interruption. An interruption upsets them. They just want to get it fixed. And so that goes back to the whole training point that Andre made, which is why the training is so huge.
I would also think of why isn't Microsoft just disabling this by default? But then again, they want you on Teams. They don't want you text messaging or WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. So they have to open it up to make it easy because nobody wants to now go to the administrator. So I get it, but I also just feel that this should just be something where if it's starting to become an issue like this, be a little proactive or something.
Yeah. It's not like they're calling your phone and, they can deploy malware through the call that they're making, So I do agree with you, Andre, that maybe they shouldn't have that setting open to everybody. But again, you're right. If it's not convenient, people won't use it. So they need to make all this technology super convenient and less secure. Otherwise, it won't get adopted by the people, by the masses. And that's what they need to make money.
Well, so like from a business perspective, though, if you just think about it, like Teams is a work chat, and you don't want your employees just willy-nilly chatting with anybody. And you don't want like headhunters to be able to chat them, right? If they figure out your first name, last name, at your company URL, they could just straight up chat your employees directly. Hey, I got a job that's better for you or whatever.
Well, that's a great point. That's a great point from another perspective. I mean, we're just literally seeing the enforcement of SMS marketing in the last month, right? Now there's fines associated with people who don't want to have text message marketing messages sent to them. And if you don't stop, I think it's $1,500 a text message.
Right.
That just went into effect, right? So it's not far-fetched for us to sit here and say that there's going to be a time when this type of communication will be regulated. And so what I'm saying is marketers haven't figured out what you're saying. Cyber criminals have. It's only a matter of time before some marketing guy figures out, hey, we can message people directly to Teams and get their attention. And they're going to try that just like they do with email and SMS.
Right.
So
good point.
It's all going that direction, and it's going to have to be regulated, and companies are going to have to be aware that this stuff is turned on by default. A lot of it is awareness. They just don't know that, like, hey, when we bought this, we run into it all the time. Like everybody's a global admin on M365, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just awareness and making people aware that these things can be very dangerous if they're not set up correctly, and it could harm your business in very bad ways.
Exactly.
Andre, closing thoughts?
Soon we're going to be getting car warranty advertisements on Teams.
That's right. Here they come. Randy?
No more thoughts.
No more thoughts.
Question.
Yep. Good show, guys. Thank you for your input. I think we've brought up a lot of new and interesting things that are happening out there in the cybersecurity world and how to deal with these challenges in your business. We'll see everyone next week. Please remember, share the show. Take care. Stay safe out there.